who sees. Who sees. This is a very interesting story found in the Old Testament about 1800 years before the birth of Jesus. And this story is about Abram, Sarai, Hagar, Ishmael, and Isaac. And the story says that Isaac shall be a wild donkey, and he's going to have fights with the rest of his brothers. And the history of terrorism in the Middle East and all of those places has proven the scripture to be right. For Ishmael was the father of Islam, or the Muslim father. And so throughout history, you see how Abram was the father of Judaism and Islam, or Muslim. And so you see how the history of Scripture is very deep. And I just want to ask you the question, who sees? And the first person who sees is you. Genesis 16:5, King James Version, Sarai says, I was despised in her eyes. The New International Version says she despises me. The NRSV says she looked on me with contempt. And another version says something else, but the King James Version says, I was despised in her eyes. In other words, her eyes saw something. Now, she chose to despise Sarai, but her eyes are important. And I want to say to you, all of you mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers, I want you to know that you see. When you look into the mirror, who do you see? Who's looking back at you? When you look into the mirror this morning to start your Sunday journey, to get dressed and ready to go to church, who did you see? I saw, as Philippians 4:13 says, I can do all things through Christ which strengtheneth me. But who did you see? Our text says that Hagar chose to look down on somebody because they could not have a baby, but one other scholar sees Hagar a little differently. She sees Hagar as an Egyptian princess and has theories where Hagar was really an Egyptian princess adopted by Sarai, and you know, the rest of the story goes on, but I just want to know, do you see yourself that way? Do you see yourself as a princess? I mean, it's your choice. I mean, let's look at Hagar. You can see her as a slave girl, a faithful maid, a black woman used by the male and abused by the female of the ruling classes. You can see her as a surrogate mother, as a resident alien without legal recourse, as the other woman, as a runaway youth. You can see her as a religious person fleeing from affliction. You can see her as a pregnant young woman alone. You can see her as an expelled wife. You can see her as a divorced mother with child. You can see her, I'm not done yet. You can see her as a bag lady carrying bread and water. You can see her as a homeless woman. You can see she is all of us. Phyllis Tribble did that thing, and she recounted all of the ways that you can see Hagar. But what I want to know is, how do you see yourself? tribble names Hagar. Hagar was she was the first person to receive a divine messenger in the scripture. She was the only person to name God, to name a deity. She named him the God who sees. She is the first one to bear a child to the patriarch Abram. She is the first one, I'm still going. She's the first one to hear an announcement in all of Scripture. She's the first one to receive a divine promise of descendants in all of Scripture. I'm not done yet. She's the first one to weep for a dying child in Scripture. In fact, I'm not done yet. Hagar was the only wife in the Old Testament. Later on, she names a wife for her son Ishmael. She finds a good Egyptian girl for him to marry and go on with his life. His mama did that. She is the only mama in all of Scripture to find a wife for her son. Now, I just want to know, can you see yourself as a first? I mean, all of these are choices about how you see yourself. And I want to know, how do you see yourself? You can choose to see yourself negatively, or you can choose to see yourself positively. It's your choice. You see. And we have too many children having children, and too much confusion in our homes, and too much chaos in our communities. And I want to know, who do you see as you look in the mirror? As God gives you the opportunity to be alive one more day, I want to know, who do you see? You ought to see somebody who's fearlessly and wondrously made. You ought to see a miracle. Don't you know that even for your mama to get pregnant and for the seed to find its way to the womb and impregnate her is a miracle? And so you are a walking miracle. But how do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as somebody who's made mistakes? Do you see yourself as somebody who's messed up? Do you see yourself as somebody who can't finish nothing? Do you see yourself in that way? Or do you choose to see yourself as somebody who's a first? I had a mentor who used to call us unframed originals. You are an unframed original. You are special. You are anointed by God. What do you see? I'm tired of seeing people who don't think much of themselves. I'm tired of seeing, but God has showed us in this book with Hagar, it's your choice. What do you see? It's your choice. You have a choice as to what you see when you look in the mirror. You have a choice as to what you see as you go about your business during your day. You can see yourself as junk. You can see yourself as nobody. You can see yourself as nothing. You can see yourself as trash. Or you can see yourself as an unframed original. You can see yourself as a special child of God. You are special. You're somebody's mama. And if you ain't somebody's mama, you're still special because you came from a mama. You are a miracle. It's a miracle that you're here. I don't know by scientific fact how it all worked out for you to be born, but you were born, and you stayed born, and you stayed alive, and you survived the foolishness in your life, and you're here by the grace of God. And it's time for us to look in the mirror and see something special. I said look in the mirror and see something special.